Yes, I'd like to respond to Ms. Jones and Ms. Jefferson, specifically about the police killing of Mr. Pruin, who, by our understanding, was having a mental health emergency. I don't know, I know that there, in other jurisdictions around the country, there's video that comes out sooner. In Columbia, there isn't video that comes out. And in fact, there's been ongoing questions about video for matters that have long since been through the prosecution process. But I would like to ask us to have a conversation, even if it has to be in closed session, where we understand more of the circumstances surrounding the shooting, and also where we are and how we're moving along with mental health training for our police officers and for other responders to emergencies. So do I need to make a motion to ask for that, Mayor, or how would we go about having that conversation that we've been asked to have?
Can you, wait, your motion, what are you requesting exactly?
I'm requesting that we as a council have the conversation surrounding the circumstances of the death of Mr. Pruin, because it is, and I don't mean to minimize his death, but this is a problem capable of repetition. We have significant untreated mental health issues in our community, and when they devolve down, we end up in a circumstance where somebody loses their life when the police respond. So I would like us to be responsive to the requests of people who came to the meeting tonight to bring that to our attention. I think we all are already aware of that. So how is it that we have that conversation as council?
I don't know, Nancy, for the conversation around, because I think part of it is also just the conversations we have about, as the investigation is going on, what information is shared with us.
So those would be closed records, closed investigative records, and they cannot be released even to City Council. Open, closed session, doesn't matter. It's not, those are closed investigative records of the police department, I think is what I'm hearing you ask about. And then when it comes to actually management of the police department, that's city manager's purview, managing the police department and the employees in the police department and their actions. So I'm not certain exactly what's being asked, other than it doesn't sound like we have a closed session topic that would cover what you're requesting.
So is there no context in which we as city council members can respond to the requests of people in the audience who asked us to examine the circumstances under which a person having a mental health crisis ends up on the receiving end of a police shooting?
That is correct. At this point in time, there is not. You have administrative professionals in city government that you can talk with individually, but this is not something that can be released at this point in time. It's a closed record. There's an investigation, ongoing investigation going on by the Missouri State Highway Patrol into those actions, and you don't want to interfere with that because it's intended to be that is an independent investigation, and that can't be interfered with.
How would you compare and contrast, say, the city council in Los Angeles, who did have a meeting and a discussion about that after a similar incident happened in their community?
I can't speak to the city council in Los Angeles, and I won't be put under deposition regarding what all other city councils in the United States have done with regard to officer-involved shootings. I can speak to what our laws in the state of Missouri are when it comes to open records and closed records and investigative reports.
Pat, for your second part about the request for the behavioral crisis and some of our mental health, was that the second part of yours was kind of an update?
I'm responding to what members of the
Then
public
just ignore
asked
me
us.
and go on to your next one.
No. I mean, where are we? Can we talk about mental health services, or is that also a closed record?
You can talk about mental health services, not as it relates to any specific incident, but mental health services and what are being provided.
So, Mayor, can we have conversation where we talk about mental health crisis services, given that we've just had a police-involved shooting of someone having a mental health crisis?
I don't know that we can tie it to the incident as the city councilor has advised, but I think requesting of the city manager an update on, we have some requests in for behavioral crisis and mental health crisis, as well as to Ms. Jefferson's comment about domestic violence.
Yes.
I know that there's been work with True North and the police department on trying to plan some efforts around there. So maybe have an update planned
Yeah, I can,
for us.
for that part on the, with the relationship with True North, I can have something at the next council meeting to kind of give a report on that. Overall, with that whole conversation about looking at, community violence and the mental health related to community violence, I have been talking to a professor to kind of help us do an analysis of our community. And what I thought is that we need to look at community violence like we look at a community health crisis. And kind of like we looked at COVID and how we, put down parameters to kind of look at the different aspects of how do we answer some of those calls. And so we do have a proposal that we're looking at right now, and we're hoping to put together a plan on how we can move that forward. It calls for bringing together a lot of our community partners that are providing services, but providing a process so that we're having communications on exactly how can we address some of these concerns that we're seeing in our community. And so I'm hoping to have something in the next couple of council meetings where I can actually have something that can talk about how we can move forward on that part of that process.
Are you okay with him asking a clarifying on this topic?
Oh, sure, go
Following
ahead,
up.
go ahead.
So are we talking, Carlin, about a comprehensive kind of view and looking over what we're doing in mental health overall? A comprehensive kind of look at that?
I don't necessarily want to say, I won't gear to just, this is not geared toward mental health or the overall mental health. This is geared more toward looking at community violence and understanding that most of the violence that we're having is because of some mental health issues or some community health issues. It's declaring community violence as a health issue and addressing it through that parameters as opposed to trying to address it through trying to do additional enforcement, but also looking at, are there different ways that we can help address those concerns and address those issues through different parameters. It talks about us meeting with our mental health providers, meeting with our hospitals, looking at what are the impacts and what are some of the cases that we've seen come in, and try to correlate. If you have a shooting that occurs, how do you correlate that with connections to see exactly what are some of the root causes, and then come up with processes that will help address those root causes.
Mayor, I think what Mr. Seawood just said is exactly the kind of conversation we could also have about a mental health emergency and how it devolves into emergency response. So thank you. I look forward to that, and I appreciate that. There's a lot of threads about neglect and trauma that keep reoccurring, whether it's community violence among people that know each other or a mental health situation that is decompensating.